Welcome, everyone. This is Eric Laser, and this is your Sharp Squares podcast for week 3 of the NFL season 2023-24. Last week, our Sharps, as an aggregate, were 50.6 against the number. Our pick 5 results on DraftKings, 4-1. Our 3-2-1 results, 3-0, 6 for 6 on points. That brings us up to the season for 3-2-1, we are 5-1, 9 of 12 points. We did miss our 3-point game in week 1. We are 8-2 in pick 5. And for gold, silver, bronze, so far for the first 2 weeks, we are 9-3. I do think I speak for all the Sharps that we cover that past performance is no guarantee of future results. This week, I think, is a challenging card. Who did the Sharps pick? What are our top games? We will let you know through a little segment we call Gold, Silver, Bronze. And to deliver the information you are all waiting for, let me introduce you to everyone's favorite fellow degenerate, the Greg Raw.
Eric, thank you so much. 9-3 in medal games. I have to tell you that several people have come up to me saying, I'm fading you this year. And I give them a smirk. I said, I don't blame you. I think I would be fading us. And by us, I mean our collective Sharps, right? It's not us making the picks. I know you were thinking that. You didn't say anything, but I know you were thinking that. It's not, we're just aggregating everyone's picks, but they're fading our aggregation. Sometimes I think it's personal, like they want us to do poorly, but we're 9-3.
Well,
fading would.
We have said ourselves that we would fade ourselves at times last season. And in fact, I think there's a producer or two who actually tried fading us last
year. And they would have been 100% right.
Look,
this week,
they were 100% wrong. They actually lost money because
they were wrong, but it was a good theory. It was a good thesis, especially in the playoffs where we were red hot in the playoffs last year. But, I don't want to keep going there because, of course, there's a long season ahead of us. This week, though, not a lot of material to work with, whether you're with us or fading us. There's only 2 medal games, Eric. There are no gold games. There's 1 silver game, 1 bronze game, and some almost bronze games, and I'll get to that shortly. First, the silver game. The pick, it's the Atlanta Falcons. They're plus 3.5 traveling to Detroit to take on the Lions. Mike Lombardi, Tommy the Hitman, Chris Raybon, Ross Tucker, A.J. Hoffman, they all picked the Falcons. Interestingly, there was 3 dissenters on the Lions, and it still became a silver game. Fezzik, Gil Alexander, and a new Sharp to the algorithm, Cleve T.A., are on the Lions. Cleve TA, just to clarify, we've been following his picks. I should say his or her picks. It's his picks, sorry.
He was on a show with Hitman last year. We've been following his picks for a season and a half, and we are now adding him for the first time into our algorithm.
Welcome, Cleve TA. Eric, the bronze game, the pick is the Los Angeles Chargers. We're getting a half a point, plus a half a point. They're traveling to Minnesota to take on the Vikings. Rob Pizzola, Fabian Sommer, Whale Capper, and Adam Chernoff all picked the Chargers. Nobody picked the Vikings. So, medal game summary, Falcons, silver, Chargers, bronze. There are 3 additional games, and thankfully we need them to round out our 5 picks. These 3 games, Eric, they were almost a statistical dead heat. All of them could have been bronze games if we had 1/2 a pick more from one of our Sharps on any of the teams. But we didn't.
That is great. In fact, one of the games, I mean, yeah, half a pick or less, and they would have been bronze. It was that close.
3 of them, almost medal games, almost bronze games. The picks, the almost picks. The first one is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're plus 4.5, a home dog taking on the Philadelphia Eagles. Steve Fezzik, A.J. Hoffman, Kelly Stewart, Ross Tucker, and the Favorites podcast all picked Tampa. Nobody picked Philly, the second almost medal game. The pick is the Washington Commanders. Another home dog. They're plus 6.5, welcoming the Buffalo Bills to Washington. Steve Fezzik, Joe Ranieri, Ross Tucker, Gil Alexander all picked Washington. A.J. Hoffman in dissent did pick Buffalo, Eric. The last almost medal game, the Colts, they're plus 7.5. They're in Baltimore to take on the Ravens. R.J. Bell, A.J. Hoffman, Stuckey, and the Whale Capper all picked the Colts. Eric Eager, I think this is his 2023 debut on the Gold, Silver, Bronze segment. He picked the Ravens. So to summarize our pick 5 picks, these are our top 5 rated games. Only 2 of them medaled, but they're still by far our top 5 games. The Falcons, the Chargers, the Colts, the Buccaneers, and the Commanders. For 3-2-1, we had a crazy set of events. I'll let you handle that.
Before, I just want to make sure that you go down in the order of the scores that we have for these games, because you went out of order on that summary, not when you originally listed the game. So it's Falcons, Chargers, the Bucks were 3rd, Commanders 4th, Colts 5th, Bucks, Commanders, Colts almost all tied. But that was
you're saying the order of how we ranked them.
Yeah, how we ranked them exactly. So for 3-2-1, folks, you remember we base our pick 5 picks and everything you track us on or our sharps on based upon the DraftKings pick 5 contest lines publicly available. Our 3-2-1 rule that we've been in for a long, long time, you've heard us talk about it, have some games are different lines. And in this case, we debated pre-show if we should even bring this up, but I think it's a really good example of how much lines matter and what could happen with a little bit of a line adjustment. So in 3-2-1, our number 1 game, the silver game for pick 5 was the Falcons. We're getting 3.5, as Greg told you. In 3-2-1, we're only getting 3. That adjustment to that important number of 3.5 to 3 takes the Falcons out of our top 3, plummets it all the way down. On the flip side of things, the Browns that Greg didn't even mention the Browns. Well, they
weren't worth mentioning.
In DraftKings, they're minus 3.5 against the Titans. In 3-2-1, they're only minus 3. So with those adjustments, and I'm not going to get into all the math and how that all played out. With those adjustments, our 3-point game, which in 3-2-1 algorithm actually hit gold status. We're not going to track medal games for 3-2-1 algorithm. Don't worry. Too complicated. But our 3-point game is the Browns. Our 2-point game is the Bucks. And our 1-point game is the Chargers. And that's just based upon line adjustments for the different pools.
Not only that, the Bucks and the Chargers would have been silver games within that 3-2, staying on that theme into that 3-2-1 math.
The reason they rated higher in 3-2-1 is the Bucks were getting 5.5 instead of 4.5, and the Chargers were getting 1.5 instead of just a half. So all those things played into it. These are things we were doing behind the scenes to make our picks last year. We hesitate to bring it up to make it too complicated for the show, but I do think it's a good lesson in how big a line adjustment, especially through 3, matters to how people make their picks.
Well, it's good too, because we've had a lot of feedback, Eric, a lot of questions about some of the adjustments, and this is a good explanation of it. And some people, that helps the audience be actionable because they have different lines as well.
That's right. So listen, if that's all you were looking for were the picks, you are now all dismissed. But if you want to stick around, we've got a few trends and 3 games that we're going to highlight for you. First, and this is the trend of the week, you could guess it. Since 2005, 0-2 ATS teams that have not covered the first 2 weeks, have gone 83, 66, and 1, or 56% against the number in week 3. That's compliments of Bet Labs. The teams that fit that criteria this week: Saints +2 at the Packers, Chargers -1 at the Vikings, Texans +9.5 at Jacksonville. Broncos plus 6.5 at the Dolphins. Patriots minus 2.5 at the Jets. Panthers plus 6 at the Seahawks. Bears plus 12.5 at Kansas City. No, thank you. And Bengals minus 2.5 versus the Rams.
Eric, the second week 3 trend, we're going the other way. Since 2005, teams that are 2-0 against the spread and are favorites in week 3, they're only 38, 49, and 3 against the spread. That's 44%. This also courtesy of Bet Labs. Who is that applicable to this week? That would be the Packers -2 versus the Saints. That would be the Dolphins -6.5 hosting the Broncos. That would be the Ravens -7.5 versus the Colts. And that would be the Dallas Cowboys -12.5 traveling to Arizona.
So the first 2 games, folks, the Packers and the Dolphins, which is we're saying fade them, they actually perfectly correlate with the 0-2 trend. So if you want to like double up those two, your play there would be the Saints +2 and the Broncos +6.5. All right, let's do it. 3 games. We're going to go through them. First, our top ranked game on DraftKings, which is the Falcons -3.5. Themes here, basically, Detroit has lots of injuries. Chris Raybon from the Action Network. By the way, this game was produced note-wise by the pit boss, Chris Easter. But we're actually going to give some props to the guys that pulled the notes from each particular show because they do deserve it. PMAC, Patrick McQuillan. I don't know if he calls himself PMAC, but I started calling him PMAC. He collected these notes from the Action Network. Chris Raybon likes this pick primarily because of the injuries that Detroit has sustained in their loss last week to Seattle. I won't go through all the names, but key players on the offensive line are all either out or questionable. Atlanta has been able to generate pressure this year way more than last year. That could be a key factor against an injured Detroit team. Detroit hasn't proven to be a reliable team that sets themselves apart from teams like Atlanta, even with a big win over Kansas City. Raybon likes the hook with Atlanta at 3.5. The hitman from Forward Progress, props to Paul Krasinski for these notes. Atlanta has better playmakers with the injuries factored in. They have a better offensive line. Their defense has played really well. He thinks this game is more like 2.75 as a line, so I'm assuming he would play it if he's getting better than that. So that would help us at +3 if that's what you're able to get right now. AJ Hoffman, Dream Preview, props to EO and the banker Scott Vick for these notes. Gibbs, who's never had a full workload, is now the only running back without Montgomery playing. Lions have only 1 sack this year. Ritter hasn't been good, and a lot of what he did poorly in week 1 when he was under pressure was because he was under pressure the entire time. The Lions aren't going to create pressure, so he's going to have some time to do better. Seahawks had their way against the Lions D. And Mike Lombardi from the GM Shuffle, compliments to our golf pro, Toby Baldwin, for putting this together. All of Atlanta's numbers, offensively and defensively, are better than Detroit. Atlanta should be the favorite here, according to Mike Lombardi. Arthur Smith will scheme the run well. Atlanta is better than you think they are. Now, there was dissent here, Greg, and some good ones. First, Fezzik from the Dream Preview. Atlanta and Detroit are comparable teams, but Detroit needs this game like blood after a home loss. I'm not huge on that handicap, but this is the one I really liked from Tony Soprano, who put the notes together on Gil Alexander's Beating the Book. This is what Gil says. Detroit is beat up after the loss last week, but the pendulum has swung too far. He thinks this line is an overreaction to their loss. He thought the number should be Detroit -7. It was 4.5 on Monday. It's already dropped to 3. He thinks this is an overreaction on recency bias. He also thinks these teams are fairly even. Ritter did not show him a lot, yes, but he's better at home. Let's see him on the road. Detroit is better on defense. They will struggle against the pass rush. In Atlanta, they struggle against the pass rush, but Atlanta is not going to be able to expose this weakness. Timestamps on this: the Dream Preview, 34 minutes, 28 seconds. Even money, 16 minutes, 58 seconds. You can get the handicap from the Action Network if you fast forward to 7 minutes, 45 seconds. GM Shuffle covers this at 45 minutes, 6 seconds. Forward Progress covers this at 50 minutes, 22 seconds. And Beating the Book covers it at 34 minutes and 41 seconds.
Eric, the top-rated bronze game, the Chargers, the pick at the Vikings +0.5 point. These highlights courtesy of Jared Golong. The themes, the Chargers. Offense is a great matchup versus a weak Minnesota defense. Minnesota also no viable running threat. Fabian Summer, these notes from Paul Krasinski, the podcast Forward Progress. Vikings have some offensive line injuries. Christian Darrisaw has back issue and his backup also on the IR. Also, the Vikings center, not sure who that is also out. Vikings defense is what has been expected. They don't have the personnel and still stand pressure around 50% of the time, which Summer believes the Chargers will handle. Vikings run offense has been non-existent. That's from Fabian Summer. From the Whale Capper Matchbook podcast, notes courtesy of Corey Como. Drew is holding his nose and taking the Chargers. He thinks Kellen Moore can scheme up the Chargers to score into the 30s. Not expecting Eckler, but still believes the game plan will be strong enough to take on the Vikings. He's leaning Chargers and thinks that they should be priced at -2. Wow, that would be quite a... He thinks they should be priced at -2. The current line, I think, is +1.5. And once it's confirmed that Eckler is in or out, he will most likely be on the Chargers side. From Adam Chernoff, notes courtesy of the ambassador, Dave Eby. Simple handicap, of course, Adam Chernoff's podcast. Adam got around to liking the Chargers, money line +100. If Kellen Moore is going to run the football, he's going to have success because of what Minnesota's defense does. Moore absolutely might run the football, especially in the first half. If he doesn't, it's going to be Justin Herbert versus a weak Viking secondary that he can pick on and pick apart. Chernoff also doesn't think the Chargers can do anything wrong on offense within this game, within this matchup. If he has to bet on one of these defenses doing something, it has to be the Chargers, and he likes their offense a little bit more than Minnesota's. Chernoff also echoes Fabian Summers' comment about the Vikings' lack of ground game. He further added to it that 9 out of 10 yards they gain so far through 2 weeks are through the air. Is that possible? 90% of the Vikings' yardage to date is through the air. That's crazy if true. I guess there I go, Eric, asking. I couldn't get through without asking a question that we don't know the answer to. But I think sometimes you can ask a rhetorical question. Chernoff also added, if there's a team that's more dysfunctional than the Chargers, it's Minnesota. Now that we can all relate to. Timestamps Forward Progress, 14 minutes, 21 seconds. Matchbook, 7 minutes, 20 seconds. And the Simple Handicap, 5 minutes, 40 seconds.
And to liven up the show today, we are bringing in the aforementioned David Eby. I like to call him the ambassador, one of our lead producers, to cover the third game. Go ahead, Eby.
Thanks, Eric. We'll try and come hard with the energy. We're going to be talking about here the Eagles at the Buccaneers. The pick is the Buccaneers, +4.5 points. Steve Fezzik from the Dream Preview, and shout out to Ed Ortiz and Scott Vick with putting together these notes. Because the Eagles have won both of their games, people are not at all that concerned. But if you look at the underlying stats and the team, they're not playing well. Eagles D is banged up. They're down multiple starters to start the year. Philadelphia YPP is atrocious, gaining 5 yards per play, but giving up the defense, giving up 5.7 YPP. AJ Hoffman, also from the Dream Preview, says, isn't this the same Eagles D? Oh, he says this isn't the same Eagles D from a year ago. There are a bunch of young guys on the team, and as Fez mentioned, a bunch of beat-up guys on this team. They were without Reed Blankenship and James Bradbury last week, and they also lost Avonte Maddox for the season. Now, we should mention that after the recording of the Dream Preview, which is on Wednesday, these two guys, Blankenship and Bradbury, did practice yesterday. It was a limited practice, but they were practicing, so keep that in mind. Tampa Bay can slow down the run. It won't be as easy like Minnesota was. And the Philadelphia offense hasn't been that good. And A.J. Hoffman continues. Last season, they were the third best offense per DVOA, first in rushing, fifth in passing. This season, and we're talking about Philadelphia, they're sitting at 13th. They're still third in rush, but 23rd in passing. A.J. was expecting the money to come in on Philadelphia, as were other sharps, but that hasn't happened. The pros are fading Philadelphia. Kelly from Wager Talk says the Eagles are due for some regression coming off the Super Bowl season. They are 4-10 against the spread as a road favorite. And she thinks that the Tampa Bay defense has improved from last season and great at stopping the run. They should be able to get some pressure on Eagles quarterback Jalen Hurts. Finally, Simon Hunter at the favorites says this is his bet of the week, Buccaneers plus 5.5. And he still likes it at 4.5, which is lucky for us. Timestamps, Dream Preview, 12 minutes, 23 seconds. Wager Talk, 4 minutes, 17 seconds. Even Money, 24 minutes and 13 seconds. And the favorites, AKA the faves, 31 minutes and 20 seconds. Let's go back to Eric.
Thanks, guys. And just a reminder, none of us are truly sharp, but this is your Sharp Squares podcast.
Good luck out there.